My son shouted loudly right in front of my face. "Don't expect me to take care of you at your age. I have my own life and my own family." I nodded quietly and rewrote my will. The next morning, he forced his way into my house. But before the story begins, please write in the comments where you're watching from. Don't forget to like and subscribe so the channel's Stories with Meaning can continue to grow and bring you more powerful stories. I was pouring tea into a cup when the sound of a motorcycle stopped in front of the house. That familiar exhaust sound made my heart race. "That must be Lucas and Clara," I murmured to myself. I hurried to straighten the tablecloth, its colors long faded. I may be 70, but my reflexes are still decent. I scanned the living room once more. An old sofa, a glass cabinet filled with teacups gifted by former students, and a photograph of my late husband hanging on the wall. This house is small, but nearly my entire life has been spent here. The door was knocked briefly, then opened without waiting. Lucas walked in without a smile. He was still wearing his office shirt, untucked at the hem. Clara followed closely behind, gripping her crossbody bag. She looked tired, but her eyes were alert, calculating. "Oh, come in, come in. I'll make some tea," I said cheerfully. "It's been a while since you visited." They sat down. Lucas immediately pulled out his phone, his thumb scrolling endlessly. Clara smoothed her skirt and glanced around the room, as if reassessing the value of everything in it. "Where are Olivia and Marcus?" "At home," Clara replied. "They have exams tomorrow, so they're studying." I nodded, swallowing my disappointment. I hadn't hugged my grandchildren in a long time. Usually, I only saw them through photos Clara occasionally sent, and even those had become rare. I placed 2 cups of tea on the table. "How's work, Luke?" He let out a heavy sigh, as if the world was resting on his shoulders. "Same as always. Higher targets, same paycheck. Mortgage, car payments, the kids' school, everything piles up." Clara added, "Life is expensive now, Mom. Utilities, groceries, everything's gone up, and Lucas carries it all alone." I sat slowly across from them, my knees creaking softly. "I understand. That's why I always pray for you." Silence fell. Only the ticking wall clock and passing motorcycles outside could be heard. Lucas finally put down his phone. "By the way, Mom, I met the notary who handled this house's paperwork." My heart skipped. "Why the house deed?" "Just checking. The title is under my name now, right? So if anything happens, it'll be easier to handle." His tone was flat, but something in his eyes unsettled me. I nodded. Years ago, when he had just gotten married, I was the one who insisted the house be transferred to his name. I thought it would secure his future. Now that decision felt like a knife I had aimed at my own chest. "Luke," my voice was soft, "lately I've been sicker more often. I can't walk far anymore. At night I get scared being alone in this house." I swallowed. "I was thinking maybe I could move in with you?" The words hum in the air. Clara and Lucas exchanged a quick glance, brief but unmistakable. Discomfort, resistance. "Well," Clara chose her words carefully, "our house is already cramped. The kids are getting older. They need space." "I can stay in the living room," I cut in quickly. "Just a thin mattress is fine." Lucas exhaled loudly. "Mom, don't be selfish." The word hit me like a slap. "Selfish?" I whispered. "I'm stressed enough already, with work, with bills. Clara and I need space for our own family. You can't just suddenly move in like we don't have burdens." I lowered my head, my chest aching. "I'm just afraid to be alone," I said. I sold land back in Oregon so you could go to college. I thought I wouldn't be alone when I grew old." Lucas scoffed. "Don't bring up the land again. That's a parent's duty. I never asked for it. I've worked my whole life for my family, and now you want to add more weight?" "Wait," my voice broke. Clara shifted uneasily. "Luke, please, she's your mother." But Lucas had already exploded. "Listen carefully." He leaned forward, his face inches from mine. "I will not take care of you at your age. I have my own life and my own family." The world stopped. He said it loudly, right in front of my face, loud enough that the neighbors could hear. I heard footsteps outside, maybe Mrs. Peterson pretending to sweep while listening. My hands trembled. "Are you serious, Lucas?" I asked quietly. "Yes," he said coldly. "This house is under my name now. My life, my responsibility. You take care of yourself." Clara closed her eyes, but said nothing. That silence hurt the most. I glanced at my husband's photo on the wall. His smile felt like mockery. "This is the result of all your sacrifices, Helen." Tears finally fell, one by one, then uncontrollably. "All right, Lucas," I said through sobs. "I won't trouble your life anymore. I won't ask for anything." I stood up slowly, forcing my knees to obey. As I looked around the living room one last time, a clear thought echoed in my mind. Enough. That night, I didn't yet know I would rewrite my will, but something inside me broke and awakened. Mrs. Peterson sighed several times, her face a mix of sadness and anger. "No matter how exhausted someone is, Helen," she said firmly, "it's never right to speak to a parent like that. Just hearing it makes my blood boil." I only shrugged. "Maybe this is partly my fault, too," I replied quietly. "Ever since he was little, I gave him everything he wanted. I never said no. This is the result." As we talked, I didn't realize that a teenage girl, Mrs. Peterson's neighbor who sometimes helped her clean, was sitting on the porch playing on her phone. I assumed she wasn't paying attention, but young ears are always sharper than we expect. A few hours after Mrs. Peterson went home, I finished writing. I hugged the papers briefly before placing them into a brand new plastic folder. This time, I stored it neatly in the very bottom drawer. That night, surrounded by clothes I rarely wore anymore, I fell asleep with a strange feeling, painful yet oddly relieving, like I had finally cut a rope that had been tightening around my own neck for years. Early the next morning, just after dawn, loud pounding shook the front door. "Mom, open the door!" I jolted awake, my heart racing. That voice, it was Lucas, angry, not like yesterday. I fumbled for my glasses and hurried to the living room. The door was pounded again. "Mom, I know you're in there. Open up." "Yes, wait a second," I shouted. Before my hand could fully turn the lock, the door was shoved from outside. The half-open lock snapped loose, and the door nearly slapped my face. Lucas stormed in, taking long, furious strides. His face was red, eyes blazing. "Where is it?" he shouted, skipping any greeting. I stepped back instinctively. "Where is what, Luke?" "Don't play dumb." He scanned the living room, then headed straight for my bedroom. "The will. You think I don't know?" I froze in the doorway, watching him yank open drawers, rummage through my wardrobe, even throwing aside my pillow. My breathing tightened. Outside, I could hear footsteps gathering again. Neighbors, whispering, had returned. In that moment, I realized my decision from last night was no longer just my private affair. A bigger storm had already begun. Lucas tore through my room like a man possessed. Drawers slammed, the wardrobe was forced open, clothes scattered across the floor. "Lucas, stop! Those are my clothes!" I cried. "Where is it?" he barked. He didn't listen. His eyes were wild, his breath heavy. "You think you can just rewrite a will without telling me?" The blood drained from my face. So someone really had been listening last night. Someone had told him. He yanked open the bottom drawer. The blue plastic folder flew onto the floor, spilling its contents, my old will, photocopies, and the pages I had written just hours earlier. Lucas grabbed the papers and read quickly, his jaw clenched. Savings donated to an orphanage, a church, people who take care of you. He let out a short, bitter laugh. "So you're giving your money to strangers now." I stepped closer. "That's my savings, Lucas. I just don't want to—" "So what do you think I am?" he roared. "Not your son?" My heart hammered in my ears. "This house is already under my name, and now you want to give your money away too? What about your grandchildren? You don't think about them at all?" He shoved the pile of clothes on the bed as if it were my face. "Lucas, listen," I said softly. "I don't want to make your life heavier. I just don't want to depend on you anymore. If I get seriously sick one day, I don't want to be a burden. Let the money end the word burden." He stared at me, eyes bloodshot. "You are a burden." Those words cut deeper than his shouting. My knees weakened. "Lucas, I'm the one who gave birth to you." "So what?" he snapped. "That was your duty as a parent." He stepped closer, crushing the papers in his hands. "Don't use that to control me. I have my own family now." He raised my new will high and tore it slowly, right in front of my face. The sound of ripping paper felt like something inside my chest tearing with it. The pieces fluttered down, covering my feet. "Lucas, don't!" I reached for his hand instinctively. He shoved me away. I lost my balance. My back slammed against the edge of the small table, and I fell hard onto the floor. Pain shot through my waist and the back of my head. My vision blurred. "Oh, God," I whispered, trying to endure the pain. From outside the room, I heard a sharp scream. "Mrs. Peterson, call the HOA! Call someone!" It was a young woman's voice, probably the same girl from the porch. Lucas looked startled, suddenly realizing the front door had never been fully closed. From the living room came hurried footsteps and the clatter of the gate. "Helen! Helen!" Mrs. Peterson's voice called out. "What's going on?" Lucas tried to steady his tone. "Nothing, Mrs. Peterson, just a family matter." But she had already rushed in, followed by 2 other women and a breathless community officer. "Oh my God, Helen, she's on the floor!" Mrs. Peterson immediately knelt beside me, supporting my shoulder. "This can't be ignored," she said firmly. "What kind of son treats her own mother like this?" I wanted to say everything was fine, but my mouth felt heavy. My head still throbbed. Not long after, the sound of a police car siren stopped in front of the house. Someone had called the police, probably one of the neighborhood kids who saw the commotion. 2 officers entered and asked what happened. It felt like a cheap TV drama, except this was my real life. "There was a fight, officer," Mrs. Peterson said angrily. "This woman was pushed by her son." "That's a lie," Lucas snapped. "She fell on her own." The officers looked between us. "Ma'am, would you like to file a report?" one of them said gently. I looked at Lucas, this child I once cradled through fevers, cleaned after bike crashes, now standing in the corner like he was my enemy. "If I report this, will your life become lighter?" my heart asked. Another voice answered quietly. "At least you'll stop staying silent." I swallowed. "I'd like to explain first," I said, my voice hoarse but steady. We moved to the living room. With Mrs. Peterson's help, I sat down. The officer opened a notebook. I told them everything, from yesterday's argument, Lucas's words, the letter I wrote last night, to him forcing his way in and tearing it apart this morning. Lucas kept interrupting, calling me dramatic, but the neighbors watching through windows and doorways gave me strength. For the first time in my life, I did not retreat. One of the officers, probably in his early 30s, sighed. "Ma'am, cases like this are often considered elder neglect or abuse, but the process can be long. If you feel unsafe, you can seek legal assistance." He pulled out a business card and placed it on the table. "This is the Community Legal Aid Center. They provide free help for people in need." I stared at the card for a long moment. Small letters, an address, a phone number. It felt like a bridge I never knew existed. After the police and the HOA representative left, Lucas stood at the door, his face dark. "Congratulations, Mom," he said coldly. "Now the whole neighborhood knows what a terrible son I am." I took a slow breath. "I only told the truth." "You think calling the cops will make you happier?" he sneered. He stepped closer. "Since the house deed is under my name, everything here is my business. You can play with wills all you want, but your influence over my life ends today." He pointed at the floor. "One day, if I decide to do anything with this house, don't interfere. Don't act like you have a say. You built it once. That's the past." Those words struck harder than before, but something inside me changed. If this were the old me, I would have cried. Now, I stayed silent, letting every word sink in so I would never forget. "All right, Lucas," I said quietly, "then I'll stop interfering in your life too. From now on, I'll take care of myself." He snorted, turned, and slammed the door behind him. The sound echoed, then disappeared. In the sudden silence, I looked at the legal aid card on the table and touched its surface. Outside, Mrs. Peterson watched me anxiously. "Helen, do you still want to stay here? What if Lucas gets angry again?" I let out a long breath. My chest hurt, but amidst the pain came a decision I never imagined before. "Maybe it's time for me to leave." "You don't need to pay me, ma'am," Adrian said. "Just think of it as me helping my own grandma. She passed away a long time ago." Strangely, those simple words warmed my chest. In the middle of being discarded by my own child, there was someone else's child calling me ma'am, sincerely. One afternoon, while I was folding clothes, my phone vibrated. A message from Clara appeared in the family group chat. She sent photos of their newly renovated living room, a brand new sofa, a large flat-screen TV mounted on the wall, a thick plush carpet. In the next photo, Olivia was holding the latest smartphone and Marcus was riding an expensive bicycle. "Grateful for our blessings. Lucas's income has increased. Please keep him in your prayers, Mom," Clara wrote. I read it without replying. In another photo, I saw Lucas smiling broadly in front of his office building, a large real estate company logo behind him. The caption on his status read, "Slowly but surely, life has to level up." A few days later, gossip from the neighborhood reached me through Mrs. Peterson, who came to visit. "Do you know, Helen?" she said quietly. "They say your house has been used as collateral for a large loan." She explained that Lucas had been telling people he was investing in a housing development project. He said, "It'd be a waste for such a nice house to just be lived in." My stomach churned. "So the house has been mortgaged?" I asked. "Yes," Mrs. Peterson nodded, but he talks about it proudly, like he's a family hero. He says, once it works out, we'll all be richer. I smiled bitterly. The house I had built from inherited land and my modest teacher salary had become a trophy for Lucas to display his ambition, and I no longer even have a key to its door. At the beginning of every month, money is transferred to my bank account from Lucas. The amount isn't much, just enough to cover rent and simple meals if I budget carefully. But there's always a message attached. This is for you, Mom. Don't waste it. I have a lot of payments, too. Sometimes followed by, you should be grateful I still send money. Many parents don't get anything at all. I read those messages with mixed feelings. Money that should have been neutral now felt like a reminder that in his eyes, I was nothing more than a burden. Once, Olivia sent me a private message. Grandma, Dad said you're mad at him because of the house. Why is that? Dad works really hard for all of us. I typed a long reply, then deleted it all. In the end, I wrote only, Grandma isn't angry at anyone. Grandma loves you all. The reply came quickly. If you love us, don't make Dad's life harder, Grandma, followed by a flat-faced emoji. On another day, Marcus sent a short voice message. His voice was quiet, as if he was afraid of being overheard. Grandma, I miss you. Grandma, when will you visit? Dad and Mom get mad if I ask, but I miss you. I saved the message. Sometimes I replay it at night. That innocent voice ties me to a house that no longer belongs to me, but still holds my grandchildren. The pressure didn't stop there. One afternoon, my cousin from a small town outside Portland called. Helen, how could you be so cruel? Lucas says you want to give your assets to strangers. He said you're trying to cut your grandchildren out of the inheritance. He continued without pause. You're old now. Focus on prayer. Don't think about revenge. I stayed silent for a long time. I just don't want to be a burden, I finally said, and I haven't taken anyone's rights. But you even went to the police, he snapped. You embarrassed your own child. The whole community is talking. If you're struggling, talk nicely. Don't involve the law. After the call ended, I sat on the edge of the bed for a long time. It felt as if everyone saw me as the problem, not the victim. A disobedient child remains a source of pride as long as he looks successful. A mother who speaks up is considered disruptive. That night, I sat at my small table. The business card from the Community Legal Aid Center lay before me. I stared at the phone number. My fingers hovered over my phone. If I call, will my life get better or more complicated? Adrian appeared at my door, knocking softly. Ma'am, my mom cooked too much. She asked me to bring you some vegetables. I smiled weakly. Thank you, dear. Come sit for a moment. He sat on the plastic chair, his eyes glancing at the card on the table. What's that? He asked. A card for people who help folks like me, I answered honestly, but I'm still afraid to call. Adrian shrugged. If you feel you're being treated unfairly, why not try? The worst thing is nothing happens, but if you stay silent, you're the one who keeps getting hurt. Those simple words stayed with me all night. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, listening to the neighbor's TV and motorcycles passing through the alley. Amid all the noise, my heart felt lonely, but slowly it hardened. Pressure came from my old house, my extended family, and people's whispers. But in this narrow rented room, for the first time, I had a small space to decide for myself, remain silent or start fighting. And the choice no longer felt like it was about money, but about how I saw myself as a mother, and as a human being. That morning, my head felt unbearably heavy. I had barely slept, haunted by the legal aid card on the table, Lucas's words, my relatives' voices, and the luxurious photos in the family group chat. I stood up too quickly from bed. The room spun. My stomach churned. My ears rang. Oh, God! I reached for the wall, but my hands were weak. My steps faltered towards the door. The moment I reached the doorway, everything went dark. When I woke up, I was lying on a clinic bed. The sharp smell of disinfectant filled my nose. An IV line was attached to my hand. Adrian sat on a plastic chair beside me, his face anxious. "Ma'am, you're awake," he said softly. I blinked. "Where am I?" "At the community clinic," he replied. "I found you collapsed outside your room. The door was open. I called people and we brought you here." He exhaled in relief. "Thank goodness we found you quickly." A young doctor came in, checked my vitals, and explained that my blood pressure had dropped due to exhaustion. "At your age, severe stress affects the body," he said gently. "Try not to overthink things." "Don't overthink things," he said, so easily. After a few hours, I was allowed to go home. Adrian accompanied me, carrying my medicine bag and paying for the motorcycle ride. Back in my room, I sat slowly on the bed. "You really went through a lot for me," I said. Adrian shook his head. "It's okay, ma'am, but I'm serious. You can't keep living like this. If something happens to you, who will stand up for you?" I looked at the card on the table. After fainting earlier, Adrian's words felt heavier. If I died suddenly, all my stories would die with me. No one would know how that house was built, how Lucas used it, how I was living now. Slowly, my left hand reached for my phone. "Adrian, will you stay with me while I call this number?" I asked. He nodded immediately. "Of course, ma'am." My fingers trembled as I pressed the numbers on the card. After a few rings, a woman's voice answered, firm but kind. "Hello, this is the Community Legal Aid Center. How can we help you?" I swallowed. "My name is Helen. I'm an elderly woman having problems with my son." We made an appointment. Their office wasn't far, just a short bus ride. 2 days later, accompanied by Adrian, I arrived in a small office in a 3-story commercial building. The paint was faded, but the place was busy. In the waiting area sat several people, elderly women, men, even a young mother holding a baby. All wore tired but hopeful expressions. The receptionist called my name. "Mrs. Helen, please come in. Miss Cynthia will assist you." Inside a modest room with a wooden desk and shelves full of thick folders sat a young woman with shoulder-length hair wearing a neat white blouse. She stood and smiled. "Good afternoon, ma'am. I'm Cynthia. Please have a seat." I sat slowly. Adrian sat beside me, his head lowered politely. "He's my neighbor," I explained. "He helped take me to the clinic when I collapsed." Cynthia nodded. "Thank you for accompanying her." She turned to me. "Now, Mrs. Helen, please tell me everything from the beginning. Take your time." The house looked solid in photographs, but in truth it stood on fragile ground, ready to collapse at any moment. "So, what should I do?" My voice was barely audible. Cynthia looked straight at me. "First, Helen, do not withdraw the police report you've already filed. Second, you need to write a detailed timeline from the very beginning until now. Who heard Lucas yelling? Who saw you fall? Who knows what happened? Third, if you're willing, we can officially represent you. Everything is free. You qualify for our legal aid." I hesitated, then asked in a trembling voice, "If I fight back, does that make me an unfilial mother?" That question had been lodged in my chest for years. Cynthia gave a small, steady smile. You're not fighting your son as a human being. You're standing against his actions. You are still Lucas's mother, but you are also a human being with rights. You have the right to be protected, the right not to be hit, not to be humiliated, not to be discarded after decades of sacrifice. My eyes burned. I'd cried so many times over the past few months, but this felt different. There was anger in it and relief. Adrian gently nudged my arm. "You're not alone anymore, right?" he whispered. Cynthia slid a document across the desk. "If you agree, please sign this power of attorney. It allows us to represent you legally. We'll coordinate with the police and start collecting evidence." I stared at the paper for a long time. In my head, my relatives' voices echoed. "Don't involve the law. You'll shame your child." But another voice rose, my own. "If you stay silent, you'll die slowly." My hand shook as I picked up the pen, but this time was different from when I'd signed the house over years ago. I wasn't being pressured. I knew exactly what I was doing. I took a deep breath and signed. Cynthia smiled. "From today on, Helen, you're not walking this road alone." On the bus ride home, hot air rushed through the open window. My body was still weak, but something inside me stood upright. For the first time since Lucas had screamed in my face, I wasn't just a target anymore. I was standing, slowly, shakily, but standing as someone ready to fight. After signing the authorization at the Community Legal Aid Center, my life entered a new, exhausting path. Cynthia called often. "Helen, there's a police summons next week. I'll be with you." The first time I sat in the investigator's office, my body trembled. The chair was stiff. The fluorescent lights were harsh. Papers lay in front of me. Statements, audio recordings, official reports. Cynthia sat beside me, occasionally pressing a reassuring hand against my back. "Helen," the investigator asked, "do you stand by your statement?" "Yes, sir," I replied quietly. Lucas was summoned too. When he entered the room, our eyes met briefly. His eyes were red and tired, not with regret, but with irritation, like someone whose routine had been disturbed. He sat across from me, accompanied by a corporate lawyer from the real estate firm where he'd worked. "My mother is exaggerating," Lucas said loudly. "This is just about a house and a bit of money that got blown out of proportion. I'm her only child. I send her money every month. Then suddenly she drags in lawyers and the police. I'm the one who's embarrassed." His lawyer nodded, adding legal jargon I barely understood. "No concrete witnesses, ordinary family dispute," as if I were nothing more than a nagging old woman. After the questioning, my body collapsed back at the rental room. I could barely get out of bed. Adrian brought me porridge and sweet tea, insisting I eat. "You're getting thinner, Helen. Please don't give up now." I nodded weakly. News about Lucas reached me from all directions. Mrs. Peterson, neighbors who still visited my old house, whispers at corner shops. "Projects at Lucas's company are stalled," Mrs. Peterson told me one afternoon. "Customers are complaining. House is unfinished, money gone." Weeks later, more news followed. Lucas was fired. The stories varied. Some said he was a scapegoat. Others said he manipulated collateral data. What was clear was this: everything on Clara's side began to crack. One night, my phone rang. "Helen," Clara's voice was hoarse, "Lucas is raging at home. Bank people, field agents, who knows who else keep coming, shouting, demanding money." I stayed silent. "Lucas says this is all because you involved the Community Legal Aid Center, that everything spiraled because of you. He says using the house as collateral was never a problem before." Her tone blamed me, but fear leaked through. "Clara," I said calmly, "I never forbade the house being used. I only didn't want to be hit or thrown out. The loan was Lucas's decision." On the other end, Clara cried softly.
I'm so tired, Helen. My parents are furious. They said if the house gets seized, I should take the kids and come home, leave that man. Before I could answer, Lucas shouted in the background. The call cut off. A few days later, Cynthia came to my rental with news that made my stomach knot. "The bank has initiated foreclosure proceedings," she said carefully. "They've sent a letter to you as well, since your name appears in the house's construction history. You may be called as a witness." She handed me stamped copies. The words blurred as I read. Foreclosure, defaulted collateral, auction. "So the house really can be taken?" I asked faintly. "Yes," she replied honestly. "But legally, this also puts Lucas in a difficult position. There are indications he inflated the property value and presented the house as entirely his personal asset. There's no mention that it was built using his parents' inheritance." I slumped back in my chair. "If the house is seized, where will my grandchildren live?" Cynthia paused. "Most likely with Clara's parents. From what you've told me, they don't want Lucas living with them anymore." That night I couldn't sleep. I imagined Kenara and Ronald waking to strangers shouting outside, seeing furniture dragged out, a foreclosure notice nailed to the gate. The children are innocent, I thought. If I continue, am I destroying their lives? More doubts followed. After a preliminary hearing, Cynthia called me. "I'll be honest, Helen. The judge seems to prioritize written records. The deed being in Lucas's name is a strong factor. About the fall, Lucas insists you slipped. Witnesses heard shouting, but no one saw the exact moment." She sighed softly. "We still have options, but this path may be long and difficult. There's a chance the final ruling won't fully favor you." After the call ended, I sat on the floor of my room, back at zero. My body hurt more often, my joints cracked when I stood, my appetite faded. Adrian kept reminding me to eat, to take my medicine. "You can't collapse now," he said. One evening, sitting on the porch after rain, watching muddy water flow through the gutter, my relatives' voices echoed again. "Stop it, Helen. Withdraw the report. Make peace. He's still your child." I stared at my wrinkled hands. Am I cruel? Am I an ungrateful mother? Then the phone rang, an unfamiliar number. "Mrs. Helen?" a tense voice said. "I'm calling from the bank holding the collateral on Lucas's house. We need you to come in tomorrow for data clarification. Otherwise, procedures will continue." I agreed softly. After the call ended, I felt like I was sinking into mud. The more I struggled, the deeper I went. That night, I sat at the small table, staring at the folder of documents. The power of attorney, the timeline I'd written, evidence Cynthia had gathered. In between the papers were photos. Kenara as a toddler, laughing in my lap. Ronald as a baby, gripping my finger with his tiny hand. Tears fell onto the photos. If I withdraw the report, maybe this stops. Maybe Lucas won't be cornered. Maybe the house can still be saved. Another voice answered. If you withdraw, you admit that being hit, thrown out, and humiliated is acceptable. I closed my eyes, hugging the folder to my chest. For the first time in my life, I truly asked myself, who do I save? My child who destroyed himself, or myself who has been silent for too long? A few days later, Cynthia called again. Helen, can you come to the Community Legal Aid Center tomorrow? There's something important. I think this could change our position. Her voice was fast, but hopeful. What kind of important? My heart pounded. I'll explain in person. Please bring Adrian too. The next day, Adrian and I sat once more in the small office. Cynthia had prepared several new folders, thicker than before. Some time ago, she began, I sent staff to your hometown to investigate the land you sold years ago. She slid photocopies forward. These are the original land sale receipts, under your name and your late husband's name.
I don't want to immediately say he did it on purpose, Cynthia warned me carefully. But it's clear he used the house without considering your moral rights as the one who built it. That's what we'll emphasize in court. The next hearing felt different from the previous ones. This time, we didn't come merely as a parent filing a complaint, but with stacks of concrete evidence. The judge read through the documents one by one. Lucas's lawyer tried to redirect the focus. Your Honor, legally, the property deed is still under our client's name. Who purchased construction materials years ago is an internal family matter and does not alter the legal facts. Cynthia stood up. Her voice was calm but firm. Your Honor, while the deed is under Lucas's name, using the house as loan collateral without considering the rights and existence of his mother, who is still alive and clearly contributed to building the house, shows bad faith, especially when combined with evidence of violence and neglect. The judge tapped the desk lightly, thinking. The courtroom fell silent. I sat with my hands clasped tightly in my lap, cold sweat pooling in my palms. Finally, in a heavy voice, the judge read out several points of an interim ruling. The legal language was dense, but Cynthia leaned close and whispered the meaning. The court has ordered the house's status frozen, she said softly. That means it cannot be sold, transferred, or used until the case is resolved. I blinked. Then what about the bank? The bank is also under review, Cynthia replied. The judge sees irregularities on their side as well. This puts Lucas in a much weaker position. He can't use the house for anything anymore, and the bank can't just auction it off without further legal process. Across the courtroom, Lucas's face had gone pale. His lawyer spoke intensely with a bank representative who was also present. I caught fragments: counterclaim, procedural neglect, cooperation issues. After the hearing, news spread fast. At the small food stall near my rental, people whispered about a bank that had been careless and employees suspected of playing dirty. No names were mentioned, but everyone who knew Lucas understood. Soon after, more news followed. Lucas was officially countersued by the bank and pulled into an internal investigation at his former company. His salary was frozen, severance pay uncertain. A short article appeared in local media about a problematic loan case, illustrated with a photo of his company's office. One afternoon, my phone vibrated again. This time, it was the landline number of Clara's parents' house. Mrs. Helen, this is Mark, the voice said, firm, controlled. Yes, Mr. Mark, I replied, my chest tightening. We just found out the house Lucas used was built from your money from the very beginning, he said bluntly. Clara was never told any of this. Neither were we. We only found out about the massive loan when bank officers came looking for Lucas. There was a pause. Then his voice rose with raw honesty. I'm furious at Lucas and at myself for trusting him for so long. Our grandchildren almost got dragged down with him. I held my breath. I'm sorry, sir. I didn't know how big the loan was either. I don't blame you, Mark said more quietly. I just want you to know this. Starting today, I don't want Lucas controlling my child's future anymore. If Clara files for divorce, I'll support her. The kids will stay with us. If Lucas falls, that's the result of his own actions. The call ended. I sat staring at my phone for a long time. There was relief. Finally, another adult saw Lucas clearly. But there was also a deep ache. The child I once fought for was now spoken of like a disease people needed to avoid. That night, Lucas came to my rental without warning. The knock was hard, but not as aggressive as before. I opened the door. In front of me stood a man with hollow eyes, messy hair, a wrinkled shirt. Still my son, but a worn-down version of the confident man from his corporate photos. "Mom, I need to talk," he said without greeting. His voice wasn't angry, it was desperate. I let him in. Adrian, who had been sitting on the porch, quietly excused himself to his room, giving us space. Lucas sat on the plastic chair, rubbing his face. "My life is destroyed, Mom," he said softly. "The bank sued me, the company abandoned me, my in-laws kicked me out, Clara wants a separation. I don't even know when I'll see my kids again." I silenced. "This all started when you went to the police, Mom," he continued, his voice rising. "When you involved the Community Legal Aid Center, when the judge froze the house. If I could just liquidate that house again, I could breathe. Now I'm drowning in debt." "What did you come here for, Lucas?" I asked calmly. He pulled a sheet of paper from his worn bag and placed it on the table. "Sign this, Mom," he said. "It's a statement saying the house is fully mine, that you have no claims. If you sign, the process can be sped up. I can negotiate with the bank. I can still survive." I looked at the paper, then at his face. "So you didn't come to apologize," I said quietly. "You came to ask me to erase all traces of your wrongdoing?" "I am apologizing," he raised his voice. "I'm already ruined, Mom. I'm your son. How can you stand to see me like this?" I took a long breath. "When I asked to live in your house, you said I was selfish. When I fell, you said it was nothing. When I went to the police, you said I embarrassed you. Now you're here, not asking if I've eaten today, not asking if I'm healthy. You came with a piece of paper." "You just want revenge," he shouted. I shook my head slowly. "I just stopped being a victim, Lucas, that's all." His eyes filled, but not the kind of tears that softened hearts. Behind them was still entitlement, the belief the world owed him rescue. "If you don't sign," he whispered, "I could go to prison. I could lose everything." I looked at him for a long time. Two voices still fought inside me, but this time I knew which one I would follow. "Listen to me, Lucas," I said softly, firmly. "I will never stop being your mother. I will always pray for you, but I will no longer sacrifice my life and what little I have left to cover your mistakes. If you want to rise again, you must face this yourself." I pushed the paper back towards him. "I won't sign." His face hardened. Anger, disbelief, disappointment tangled together. "Fine," he said coldly. "Don't blame me if one day I truly have nothing left. Don't come looking for me." He stood and walked out without looking back. The door closed. In the small room, I sat alone, gasping, hands shaking. I had just made a decision that would push my son further down, but beneath the crushing guilt, there was an unfamiliar relief. For the first time, I had chosen myself, and I knew, after this, Lucas's life would never be the same again. Months passed. The legal process continued, but my days were no longer swallowed by constant fear. "Now we wait," Cynthia told me. "Live your life as normally as possible." Adrian often invited me to join neighborhood activities, helping at food drives, distributing meals. One day, the HOA representative announced a community event. "A group is preparing meals for the homeless under the large bridge near the station. Who wants to help pack food?" Adrian looked at me. "Come on, Helen, better than staying in your room." I hesitated, then nodded. "All right, I'll help." That morning, we gathered in the small yard in front of a local prayer hall. Rice, eggs, tofu, vegetables, simple meals. I sat on a plastic chair, my hands moving slowly but steadily.
The women beside me joked. Adrian carried boxes back and forth. When everything was ready, we rode in the back of an open truck to the space beneath the bridge. The air was heavy, exhaust fumes, sewage, sweat. Makeshift tents lined the area. "Meals, please line up," someone called. People came. Men, women, children, hands outstretched, eyes lighting up. I stood behind the boxes, handing them out one by one. "Here you go, sir. Please eat slowly." Then my hands froze. A man stood in front of me holding a black plastic bag. Stained t-shirt, torn jeans, long unkempt hair, thin beard. But I knew that jawline, those eyes. For a few seconds, time stopped. We stared at each other. The eyes that once held pride and confidence were now terrifyingly empty.
On one side, a mother's instinct wanted to pull him into my arms, stroke his hair, and whisper that everything would be all right. On the other, memory slapped me hard. My own face crying on the floor, his voice telling me I was a burden and that I should handle my own life. I looked straight at him. "Do you remember, Lucas?" I asked quietly, "the last time you came to my house?" He blinked. "When you brought that document," I continued, nodding, "you asked me to sign it to clean your name from everything related to the house. Do you remember what I said?" He lowered his head. "And before all of this happened, when we were still living in that house," I went on, my voice starting to shake, "what did you say to me right to my face?" He stayed silent for a long time. His lips moved, but no sound came out. His eyes filled with tears again. "You said, 'Don't expect me to take care of you at your age. I have my own life and my own family.'" I repeated the sentence slowly, word by word. My chest felt tight, but I had to say it. Some of the volunteers nearby paused and glanced over. Lucas covered his face with one hand. His shoulders trembled. "I was stupid, Mom. I was really stupid." I took a deep breath, holding back the tears that had gathered. "I believe you regret it, Lucas. I believe you're suffering now. But listen carefully." I stepped half a pace closer. His body smelled sharp and unwashed, but I didn't step back. "I forgive you as my son," I said softly. "I don't want to carry hatred to my grave." His tears fell harder. "But I will not give you my life, my savings, or what little strength I have left to fix what you destroyed yourself." "So you're going to let me die here?" he asked hoarsely. I shook my head. "I don't want you to die here. I pray that you rise again. I give you this." I pointed to the boxed meal and water in his hands, then handed him another bottle from the crate. "But beyond this, you have to find your own way, Lucas. Find work, find help, find a path. Don't come to me only when you need money or a signature." "I don't know where to start," he sobbed. "Start by admitting your mistakes to the people you hurt. Start by doing any honest work. Start by stopping the habit of blaming others." For a few seconds, we just looked at each other, drowning in our own wounds. Then a volunteer gently touched my arm. "Ma'am, the line," she whispered. I nodded. "Yes." I looked at Lucas one last time. "Eat the food," I said softly. "Your body needs strength, and if you ever see the kids, tell them Grandma will always love them." He nodded slowly, unable to speak. Step by step, he backed away, clutching the meal and water as if they were the last scraps of his dignity. He sat in a corner, hunched over, crying quietly. I returned to the crate and handed food to the next person in line. My hands trembled, tears fell, 1, 2, but I didn't stop. Inside me, there was devastation at seeing my son fall so far, and yet an odd sense of relief. Justice somehow was unfolding, not through my words, but through life itself. Years passed after that day under the bridge. Sometimes I still woke in the middle of the night, remembering Lucas holding that boxed meal. But the pain was no longer as sharp. Time slowly dulled the edges, leaving scars I could live with. The legal case eventually ended. One afternoon, Clara called me at the Community Legal Aid Center. "Mrs. Helen, the final ruling is out," she said, handing me a copy. "In short, the old house must be sold. Most of the proceeds go to the bank to cover the debt. A portion goes to you as compensation for your contribution and labor. A very small remainder goes to Lucas." I read slowly. The legal language was complex, but Clara explained it point by point. "With this ruling, your legal position is officially recognized. You're acknowledged as having rightful interest in the house, even though the title was under Lucas's name." "What about Lucas?" I asked quietly. "He still has obligations to settle, but the house is no longer his to use for anything. It's final," Clara replied. My share wasn't large. After deductions, it was modest, but it was enough for one important thing. I could finally leave the rundown rental. With help from Clara and the HOA community officer, I found a small house in another neighborhood, still in Portland, Oregon. 1 floor, 2 bedrooms, and a small yard for drying laundry. Not big, not fancy, but mine. This time, the title bore my name clearly and fully. When I signed it in front of the notary, my hands trembled but felt warm. It felt like closing a circle I had once opened recklessly. Adrian and his parents helped me move. He carried mattresses, boxes, plastic cabinets. "So this is your new headquarters now, Mom," he laughed. "You can still come and go whenever you want. This house would be too quiet with just one old woman." In recent years, Adrian graduated high school. He enrolled in evening college while continuing delivery work and occasionally helping at the Community Legal Aid Center. Clara once said, "This kid is sharp. Who knows, maybe law school someday. His turn to help people." My chest filled with pride, a pride I once believed I could only feel for Lucas. As for me, my days found a steady rhythm: morning trips to the small market, afternoons helping at the community health post or women's study groups, evenings watering plants on the porch. Sometimes the same community group that once invited me to distribute meals under the bridge still asked me to join. I always said yes, as long as my body allowed. News about Lucas came occasionally. After the divorce was finalized, Clara truly moved back to her parents' house with Kenara and Ronaldo. Their parents kept their promise. They protected my grandchildren. Sometimes Clara texted me, "Mom, sorry for the long silence. The kids are in school here now. Dad helps with expenses. Lucas, I don't know where he is. They say he does odd jobs." I replied briefly, "As long as the kids are healthy and in school, thank you for taking care of them." One day at the market, I saw Lucas from afar. He was pushing a cart stacked with heavy sacks. Sweat soaked his worn shirt. There was a scar around his ankle, probably from lifting work. He didn't see me. I didn't call out. I stood there for a moment, watching. It hurt, but there was also acceptance. Life had struck him harder than any words I ever wanted to say. All I could do was bow my light head slightly, whisper a prayer in my heart, and keep walking. Kenara and Ronaldo entered their teenage years. Slowly, they began contacting me privately. "Grandma, this is Kenara. Can I visit your new house someday?" "Of course," I replied. "Grandma's house is always open." Our first meeting was in a small park. Her grandfather sat a distance, giving us peace.
Kenara wore her high school uniform. Ronaldo wore his middle school uniform. They were taller now, more grown, but when they hugged me, I still felt the little children I once held. "Is Grandma angry at Dad?" he asked softly. I shook my head after a long conversation. "Grandma is sad about his choices, but I've entrusted my anger to God. I just don't want you to repeat the same mistakes." They nodded seriously. At that moment, I felt something long lost finding its way home, the feeling of being a grandmother again, not just a victim. One night in my small new house, I sat at a little table in the front room. In front of me lay blank sheets of paper and a pen. I was past 70. My body wasn't as strong, but my mind was clearer. I decided to write my will again, perhaps for the last time. This time, the words were simple, no complicated sentences. I wrote that I, Helen, in full awareness, wished to distribute my modest assets after my passing. The house I left to Adrian, a child not born from my womb, but who accompanied my old age without demands. My savings would be divided among the grandchildren who maintained a relationship with me and partly to the community legal aid center that once defended me. For Lucas, I left no material inheritance, only one short paragraph. To my son, Lucas James, I leave no property or money. What I leave you is a prayer that you learn the meaning of enough, the meaning of responsibility, and the meaning of being a human who does not wound those who love him. I read the lines several times. It didn't feel cruel. It felt honest. Afterwards, I called Adrian